When Carl Jung spoke about the human mind, he often described it as a vast landscape, filled with places that could either lead us to freedom and growth or trap us in endless cycles of suffering. Imagine your inner world as a map, full of valleys, dark caves, deceptive gardens, and steep mountains. Some of these places can nurture you, but others, if you stay too long, can quietly destroy you from within. In this video, we are going to explore 7 psychological places that Jung believed could destroy your mind if you're not aware of them. These are not physical locations, but inner states, subtle yet powerful terrains of the psyche that hold immense influence over how you live, love, and perceive yourself. We'll walk together through 7 of them. The place of the shadow, the place of persona, the place of collective illusion, the place of archetypal possession, the place of inner neglect, the place of unlived life, and the place of false light. Each of these represents a psychological environment where you can easily lose yourself if you're unaware, where your mind can weaken, distort, or even turn against you. By the end of this journey, you'll not only see where these places are within yourself, but you'll also begin to understand how to walk out of them with greater awareness and strength. Now, let us step into the first place, a territory Jung considered essential for anyone who seeks to understand themselves. The shadow. The shadow is that hidden part of you where all the qualities you deny, reject, or push away live. Think of it as the basement of your psyche, filled with all the impulses you don't want others to see. You may present yourself as kind, disciplined, or rational, but beneath the surface, there may be anger, laziness, or fear. Jung warned that ignoring this place makes it grow darker. The more you deny it, the more power it gains, and it begins to leak out in ways you cannot control. Have you ever noticed yourself snapping at someone for no real reason? Or feeling jealous, but pretending to be calm? That's the shadow speaking. Living too long in this place destroys the mind by forcing you into constant self-deception. You start believing you are only the image you show, while the repressed parts of you grow like weeds underground. But the shadow isn't evil. Jung always said the shadow, if integrated, contains enormous potential. It holds creativity, strength, and authenticity. The problem arises when you refuse to acknowledge it. Then the shadow becomes a monster in the dark, haunting you with projections. You might see people as arrogant, selfish, or manipulative, not realizing you're projecting your own hidden tendencies onto them. This place becomes destructive because it blinds you to reality, filling your relationships and self-image with illusions. To escape, you must face your shadow with honesty, not judgment. Otherwise, you remain trapped in the first destructive psychological place. The second place is the persona. If the shadow is the basement of your psyche, the persona is the mask you wear in the streets. Jung described the persona as the social face you present to the world, polite, professional, agreeable. It helps you function. But when you mistake the mask for your true identity, you begin to lose yourself. This place destroys the mind because it forces you to constantly perform. You become addicted to approval, bending yourself to fit roles and expectations. The deeper danger is forgetting that it is just a mask. You begin to believe you are only what others see. Imagine someone who is always the funny one among friends, but inside they are exhausted, lonely, and yearning to be serious. Or someone who is always the strong one for their family, silently collapsing under the weight of pretending. The persona place feels safe at first. It shields you from judgment, but over time, it suffocates. Jung warned that people who live only in their persona eventually experience emptiness, depression, and a sense of being fake. Their inner life crumbles because they've traded their authenticity for acceptance. To live in the persona too long is like living in a theater, where the performance never ends and the actor forgets who they really are. Escaping this place requires courage. The courage to show parts of yourself that don't fit the role, the willingness to risk disapproval, and the patience to meet your true self beneath the mask. From the persona, we enter the third place, the collective illusion. This is the vast territory of borrowed beliefs, where your thoughts are not entirely your own. Jung believed that individuals often absorb the values of the collective, society, culture, religion, media, without questioning them. It's the place where you live according to what everyone does, thinking you are free, when in truth, you are deeply conditioned. This place destroys the mind by stripping it of individuality. It makes you forget to ask, do I really want this? Do I really believe this? Or am I just repeating the script written by the world around me? Think of how often people pursue careers, relationships, or lifestyles not because they truly desire them, but because they were told it is the right thing to do. The collective illusion creates conformity, and conformity breeds quiet despair. Jung noted that much of modern anxiety comes from this exact place. People waking up at midlife, realizing they have lived someone else's dream, not their own. The destruction here is subtle, but devastating. You lose the voice of your inner self. You stop hearing the whispers of your soul. Escaping this place requires solitude, reflection, and the bravery to stand apart from the crowd, even when it feels uncomfortable. Now, we arrive at the fourth place, one of Jung's most haunting warnings, archetypal possession. Archetypes, Jung explained, are universal patterns within the collective unconscious, like the hero, the mother, the trickster, or the sage. They guide human behavior, but when one archetype takes over completely, the psyche becomes unbalanced. For example, someone possessed by the archetype of the victim may see their entire life through the lens of suffering, unable to claim their power. Someone possessed by the archetype of the savior may feel compelled to fix everyone, neglecting themselves. These archetypes are like gods in the mind, and when they dominate, you lose freedom. This place destroys the mind because it robs you of complexity. You become one-dimensional, trapped in a single pattern. Jung observed this often in individuals who were rigid in their identities, unable to adapt. Archetypal possession also fuels fanaticism. A person overtaken by the archetype of the warrior may become aggressive, destructive, unable to see nuance. Jung's warning here was profound. If you do not recognize the archetypal forces moving within you, they will control you from the shadows. This place becomes destructive because it convinces you that you are only one thing, when in truth you are many. To escape, you must learn to see archetypes as energies, not identities. They are tools, not prisons. We've now walked through 4 of the 7 places, and already the landscape of the psyche looks both fascinating and frightening. The shadow, the persona, the collective illusion, and archetypal possession, each one capable of destroying the mind in its own way. And yet, there are still 3 more places to explore. The place of inner neglect, the place of unlived life, and the place of false light. These 3 are subtler, quieter, but no less destructive. They are the terrains where most people find themselves stuck, without even knowing it. In the next part of this journey, we'll step into them carefully, uncovering how they work and why Jung believed awareness is the only way to survive them. We left off after exploring the shadow, the persona, the collective illusion, and archetypal possession, for inner territories where many people unknowingly live for years. Each one is destructive in its own way, pulling you away from authenticity and trapping you in patterns that shrink your spirit. But Jung also spoke about 3 other places, subtle yet dangerous, that can slowly corrode the mind: inner neglect, unlived life, and false light. These are the quiet places, the ones that don't shout at you with obvious pain, but instead whisper, drain, and numb you until one day you realize you've lost the deepest parts of yourself. The 5th place, inner neglect, is the wasteland within the psyche. If the shadow is like a dark basement full of unacknowledged impulses, Inner neglect is like an abandoned garden. This is the place you create when you stop listening to your own needs, your body, your feelings, and your soul. It begins in small ways. Ignoring rest, silencing your emotions, denying your creative desires. Over time, neglect becomes a pattern. You tell yourself it doesn't matter if you're tired, if you're hurt, if your dreams remain buried. You just keep pushing, performing, surviving. But Jung warned that the psyche cannot be neglected without consequence. When you ignore your inner life, it begins to rebel. It might show up as depression, physical illness, or sudden outbursts of emotion that seem to come from nowhere. This place destroys the mind because it disconnects you from your own center. Without nurturing your inner life, you become hollow, operating on autopilot. You may appear functional to the outside world, but inside, you are starving. Imagine a person who works tirelessly, chasing success, but never makes time for joy, relationships, or self-reflection. On the surface, they seem accomplished, but inside, they feel empty. Or consider someone who has spent years taking care of others, but has never once asked, "What do I need?" That emptiness, that quiet ache, is the mark of inner neglect. Jung believed that the psyche, like the body, requires nourishment through creativity, play, introspection, love, and meaning. Neglecting these leads to a slow erosion, a gradual death of vitality. To step out of this place, you must begin tending to your inner world, even in small ways. It could mean journaling, meditating, walking in nature, or simply allowing yourself to feel what you feel. If you don't, inner neglect eventually becomes a desert that consumes your entire sense of self. The sixth place, the unlived life, is perhaps one of Jung's most haunting ideas. He often said that nothing is more tragic than a life unlived. This place is where all your unrealized potential, unpursued passions, and silenced callings reside. It is the shadow of possibility that follows you, reminding you of the paths you never walked. The unlived life is filled with the books you never wrote, the songs you never sang, the relationships you never dared to enter, the risks you never took. This place destroys the mind through regret. Jung believed that midlife crises often arise because people suddenly encounter their unlived lives. They wake up one day and realize they've been living according to duty, fear, or expectation, but not according to their soul. The unlived life doesn't just sit quietly, it gnaws at you. You might feel restless, dissatisfied, even resentful without knowing why. Deep down, it's because there's a version of you that you've abandoned. Think of the man who wanted to be an artist, but chose a safe career, convincing himself it was practical. Decades later, he feels a constant bitterness he can't explain. Or the woman who longed for adventure, but stayed in the same place out of fear, now haunted by the sense that life passed her by. The unlived life is destructive because it creates inner conflict. A part of you knows who you could have been, but another part has betrayed that vision. Jung saw this as a profound source of neurosis. When the gap between the life you live and the life you desire grows too wide. But the unlived life is not just about regret. It's also about possibility. Jung insisted that it is never too late to reclaim parts of your unlived life. Even small steps, learning a skill, expressing a passion, speaking your truth, can bring pieces of that abandoned self into reality. The danger lies in denial, in pretending you never wanted more. That pretense keeps you stuck, while the unlived life destroys your mind in silence. And then there is the seventh and final place, the false light. This one is particularly deceptive because it masquerades as progress. The false light is the illusion of enlightenment without the real work. It is the place where you convince yourself you've grown spiritually or psychologically, but in truth, you've bypassed your wounds. You may adopt spiritual language, meditate, or read endlessly about self-help, but if you haven't faced your shadow, your wounds, your traumas, then you are living in a false light. Jung often criticized what he called spiritual inflation, when people mistake borrowed wisdom for transformation. The false light destroys the mind because it blinds you to your own darkness. It tells you, you're fine, you're healed, you've transcended, while the unresolved parts of your psyche remain buried. And those buried parts will always resurface, often at the worst times. This place is dangerous because it feels so good. It feels safe, positive, and empowering, but beneath it lies denial. Consider someone who insists they are all love and light, but secretly lashes out in anger when challenged. Or someone who hides behind endless positive affirmations, but never addresses the deep grief in their heart. This place traps you in a shiny illusion, preventing real growth. Jung believed that true enlightenment comes not from avoiding the dark, but from integrating it. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he wrote. The false light tries to skip the pain, and in doing so, it leaves the psyche fragile, vulnerable, and dishonest. To escape the false light, you must embrace the uncomfortable truth. Growth requires shadow work. It requires acknowledging your flaws, your fears, and your failures. It requires humility, the willingness to admit you don't have it all figured out. The false light is destroyed not by more positivity, but by honesty and integration. And so, we have walked through all 7 destructive places of the mind: the shadow, the persona, the collective illusion, archetypal possession, inner neglect, the unlived life, and the false light. Each one is a psychological landscape where you can get stuck, sometimes for years, without realizing it. Each one has the power to corrode your sense of self, your relationships, and your ability to live fully. Yet Jung never described these places to frighten us. He revealed them so that we might become conscious of where we are standing. Awareness, he said, is the first step toward transformation. But awareness alone is not enough. The journey requires courage. Courage to face the shadow, to remove the mask of the persona, to step outside the collective illusion, to loosen the grip of archetypes, to tend to your neglected inner life, to pursue your unlived dreams, and to reject the false light in favor of truth. This journey is not easy. It is not glamorous, but it is real, and it is the only path to wholeness. Imagine, for a moment, standing on the edge of your own inner map. Behind you are the places you've wandered. Perhaps you've lived too long in persona, or you've been haunted by your unlived life. Ahead of you is a path Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your true self. These destructive places are not prisons, if you recognize them. They are lessons, teachers, even doorways. By walking through them consciously, you begin to reclaim the fragments of yourself that were lost. So, the real question is, where are you standing right now? Are you hiding in your persona? Are you exhausted from inner neglect? Are you dazzled by the false light? Or are you haunted by the unlived life? Only you can answer. Jung would say that the work of a lifetime is to notice where you are, to walk into the darkness bravely, and to carry what you find back into the light of your awareness. That is how the mind heals. That is how the mind grows. And that is how the mind, once destroyed, is reborn. To truly understand these 7 psychological places, it's not enough to describe them abstractly. They come alive when you see how they play out in ordinary lives, perhaps in your own life, or in the people around you. Carl Jung always insisted that theory must meet experience, otherwise it remains hollow. So let us revisit each place, not as distant concepts, but as living realities, woven into the stories of human struggle and longing. Think first of the shadow. Picture a man who prides himself on being calm, reasonable, and polite. He never raises his voice, never argues, always keeps the peace. On the surface, he looks balanced, but deep inside, his shadow is boiling with suppressed anger. He has never allowed himself to feel rage, to acknowledge frustration, or to say no. So the shadow finds another way out. Perhaps he explodes at his children over small mistakes. Perhaps he secretly drinks to numb the feelings he denies. Perhaps he constantly criticizes others for being too emotional, not realizing he is projecting his own repressed fire. This is how the shadow destroys, by controlling you from the dark. But when this man finally admits to himself, "Yes, I am angry, I am resentful, and I need to face it," he begins to integrate. He may find healthy outlets, art, exercise, therapy, and suddenly, the shadow becomes a source of energy, creativity, and honesty. The very place that once destroyed him can now help him rebuild. Now, think of the persona. A young woman works in a corporate office. Every day, she puts on her persona like a mask. Smiling, agreeable professional. She dresses the part, speaks the part, never revealing her doubts or sadness. Her colleagues know her as reliable and cheerful. But at home, when she removes her professional armor, she collapses into exhaustion. She cries without knowing why. She feels unseen, even though everyone admires her. This is the persona's trap. She has become her mask, and the longer she stays in this place, the more she forgets who she really is. She begins to ask, "Do people love me? Or do they love the mask I wear?" Jung would say she is suffocating beneath her persona, and the only way forward is to risk vulnerability. Maybe she admits to a friend that she is struggling. Maybe she allows her boss to see her limits. Each time she risks authenticity, she weakens the prison of persona, and slowly, she finds her real self waiting beneath the performance. The third place, the collective illusion, can be seen everywhere. Consider a young man raised in a family that values stability, wealth, and social status above all else. From childhood, he is told to become a doctor or an engineer to earn respect and provide security. He never questions it. He studies hard, follows the path, earns the degrees. By 30, he has achieved everything his family wanted, but he feels hollow. He looks around and realizes he is living their dream, not his. Perhaps he wanted to be a writer, or a teacher, or an explorer, but those voices were drowned out by the louder voice of the collective. Now he sits in his office, surrounded by success, yet feeling imprisoned. This is the collective illusion at its most destructive. It robs people of their individuality. And Jung would say the only cure is to ask, "What does my soul want?" regardless of what the world expects. That question alone can break the spell of the collective illusion. Archetypal possession. The fourth place is subtler but equally powerful. Imagine someone who becomes completely overtaken by the archetype of the caregiver. She dedicates her life to helping others. Her children, her spouse, her friends, even strangers. She feels proud of her selflessness. But slowly, she begins to disappear. She has no time for herself, no sense of her own desires. The caregiver archetype, once noble, has swallowed her entire identity. Now she feels resentment, burnout, and bitterness, yet she cannot stop. Jung would say she is possessed by the archetype. It has become her master, not her servant. The path out is not to abandon caregiving, but to step back and see it as one part of her, not the whole. By reclaiming other parts, her creativity, her independence, her playfulness, she breaks free from the possession. Archetypes are powerful forces, but they are meant to guide, not enslave. The fifth place, inner neglect, is one of the most relatable. Imagine a man who has spent years working long hours, chasing promotions, and meeting deadlines. He eats poorly, sleeps little, ignores his health, and tells himself he'll rest later. He never reflects, never tends to his emotions, never nurtures his spirit. Eventually, his body begins to collapse, illness, exhaustion, anxiety. His relationships falter because he is too drained to connect. Inner neglect has turned his psyche into a barren desert. This is how neglect destroys, not with sudden explosions, but with slow erosion. But when he finally pauses, perhaps after a health scare, he realizes the cost. He begins small rituals, taking walks, journaling, resting without guilt. Slowly, life returns to his inner garden. Jung always emphasized that the psyche, like nature, needs care. You cannot abandon it without consequence. The sixth place, the unlived life, is where regret lives. Consider a woman who dreamed of traveling the world, but fear and duty kept her close to home. She longed to paint, but convinced herself she had no talent. She dreamed of love, but settled for safety. Now, in her later years, she feels restless and sad. She doesn't know why, until she realizes she is haunted by the ghost of the life she never lived. This is perhaps the most painful place of all, because it confronts you with what might have been. Jung wrote that people often fall ill when they refuse the life that is calling them. The unlived life does not disappear. It waits, it gnaws, it demands recognition. The good news is that it is never too late. Even at 70, someone can pick up a paintbrush, take a trip, write a poem, or fall in love. The unlived life destroys only when you continue to deny it. The moment you honor it, even in small ways, it begins to heal. Finally, the false light. Imagine a man who declares himself enlightened. He attends retreats, meditates, reads every spiritual book, and preaches positivity. He says he has transcended anger, fear, and desire. But in truth, his wounds remain unhealed. He still lashes out when criticized, still fears intimacy, still feels insecure, but he hides it under the mask of spirituality. This is the false light. It feels radiant, but it is built on denial. Jung called this spiritual inflation, when people mistake borrowed wisdom for real growth. The false light destroys because it keeps you from doing the hard, messy, painful work of integration. The man believes he is free, but he is trapped in illusion. True growth, Jung said, comes from facing the shadow, not avoiding it. It is humble, grounded, and honest, not shiny and perfect. Escaping the false light means being willing to admit, I am still wounded, still growing, still human. That humility is the doorway to real transformation. When you see these examples, the 7 places are no longer distant ideas. They are real, lived experiences. You may recognize yourself in one or more of them. Perhaps you have hidden in your persona, or been consumed by archetypal possession, or felt haunted by your unlived life. Jung's great gift was to map these territories so that when we find ourselves lost, we can at least name where we are. And naming is powerful. The moment you say, "This is my shadow," or "This is the false light," you take the first step toward freedom. But there is something else to consider. These 7 places are destructive not because they exist, they are part of the human psyche, but because we get stuck in them. Passing through them is natural. Everyone has a persona. Everyone has a shadow. Everyone lives under the collective illusion at times. The danger comes when you mistake the place for your permanent home. Jung's message was not to destroy these places, but to move through them consciously, to learn their lessons, and to keep walking. Think of life as a long journey across a landscape. You will pass through the valley of the shadow, the city of the persona, the vast plain of the collective illusion. You will climb the mountain of archetypal possession, wander the desert of inner neglect, and stand at the crossroads of the unlived life. And yes, you will be tempted by the glowing palace of the false light. But none of these are meant to be your final destination. They are places along the way, teachers disguised as prisons. The task is not to avoid them, but to recognize them, to step in consciously, to learn, and to step out again. That is what Jung meant by individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. So as you listen, ask yourself, which of these places feels familiar? Where have you been living? Are you trapped in persona, trying to please the world? Are you lost in inner neglect, abandoning your own needs? Are you dazzled by the false light, pretending to be healed when you are still wounded? Or are you haunted by your unlived life, wondering what could have been? There is no shame in recognizing it. In fact, recognition is the beginning of freedom. The worst prison is the one you do not know you are in. Each of these 7 places can destroy your mind if you remain blind to them. But once you see them, they begin to lose their power. You can walk through the shadow and find creativity. You can remove the persona and find authenticity. You can step out of the collective illusion and find individuality. You can loosen the grip of archetypes and find balance. You can tend your inner life and find vitality. You can reclaim your unlived dreams and find meaning. And you can reject the false light and find truth. That is the real work Jung left us. Not to avoid the darkness, but to integrate it, to turn destruction into growth, illusion into wisdom, and shadow into light. As we reach the end of this exploration, it is important to remember why Jung spoke so often about the destructive places of the psyche. He was not trying to scare us or burden us with dark truths. Rather, he was giving us a map of the mind that shows us not only where we can go astray, but also how we can find our way back. These 7 places, the shadow, the persona, the collective illusion, archetypal possession, inner neglect, the unlived life, and the false light, are not punishments. They are warnings, lessons, and invitations. The problem is not that they exist, but that we mistake them for home. To bring this into focus, let me share a story. A man once told Jung that he felt completely broken. He said he had lost his sense of who he was. He had been living as a successful professional, admired by his peers, respected in his community, but inside he felt like a fraud. He confessed that he had dreams of being an artist, but had abandoned them for the safety of a respectable career. He wore his persona so well that even he believed it for a time. But the unlived life haunted him. At night, he dreamed of painting, of creating, of being free. During the day, he felt numb and restless. His shadow also grew anger, bitterness, and envy of those who dared to follow their passions. By the time he sat before Jung, he was in despair. Jung listened, and then said something that became a turning point for the man. "You are not broken. You are trapped in places that are too small for you." Those words cut through the man's despair. He realized he had mistaken the persona for himself, mistaken security for fulfillment, mistaken approval for meaning. He had neglected his inner life, denied his shadow, and abandoned his unlived dreams. No wonder he felt destroyed. But Jung's insight was simple. He was not broken, only trapped. And traps can be escaped. That realization was the beginning of his healing. This story illustrates what we often forget. Destruction is not the end. The mind can be rebuilt, the self rediscovered, the path reclaimed. But only if we are willing to see the traps for what they are. And seeing them requires honesty. It requires saying to yourself, "Yes, I am hiding in my persona. Yes, I am haunted by the unlived life. Yes, I have been dazzled by the false light." Without this honesty, there can be no change. Consider again the place of inner neglect. How many people live years, even decades, without tending to their inner world? They function, they succeed, they care for others, but they never stop to ask, "What do I need? What makes me feel alive?" This is perhaps one of the quietest forms of self-destruction, and yet, healing can begin in the smallest of steps. Imagine someone who has ignored themselves for 20 years, suddenly deciding to take 1 hour a week to sit alone, journal, or walk in nature. That single act of care is like planting the first seed in an abandoned garden. With time, the desert begins to bloom again. Jung would say that the soul is resilient. It waits patiently for us to return. Or take the false light. How many times have we seen people parade their positivity, pretending they are above fear, anger, or grief? And how often do those same people collapse when life confronts them with real suffering? The false light is seductive because it feels safe. Who doesn't want to believe they've transcended the darkness? But Jung insisted that real growth demands integration. To be whole, you must embrace both light and dark. He once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is hard work. It means admitting you are not always kind, not always wise, not always strong. But that honesty is the beginning of true strength. When you can hold both the light and the dark within you, you are no longer fragile. You are whole. And then there is the shadow, perhaps the most famous of Jung's ideas. The shadow destroys by turning you against yourself. You see in others what you cannot face in yourself. You fight battles outside that are really happening inside. And yet, those who face their shadow often discover gifts they never knew they had. The anger you repress might contain passion. The fear you deny might contain sensitivity. The jealousy you hide might contain ambition. Jung often said the shadow is 90% pure gold, but only if you are brave enough to face it. Those who do emerge stronger, deeper, and more authentic. Those who don't remain forever haunted. So, how do you begin this journey? Jung would say the first step is awareness. Simply noticing where you are is powerful. Are you in persona? Shadow? Inner neglect? The act of naming it creates distance, and distance creates choice. The second step is honesty. Stop pretending. Admit what is really happening inside you. The third step is integration. Finding ways to bring the rejected parts of yourself back into your life. That may mean allowing yourself to express anger in healthy ways, or pursuing an abandoned dream, or simply resting when you are tired. Integration is not about perfection. It's about wholeness. But let us be clear, this is not a quick process. Jung called individuation the journey to becoming your true self, the work of a lifetime. You will pass through these destructive places many times. You will wear your persona. You will slip into collective illusion. You will neglect yourself again and again. That is normal. The goal is not to avoid these places forever, but to recognize them more quickly each time, to spend less time trapped, and to emerge with more wisdom. There is another important truth. You cannot walk this path entirely alone. Jung believed that we discover ourselves through relationship, through the mirror of others. Your shadow is often revealed in how you judge others. Your persona is often revealed in how others perceive you. Your unlived life is often revealed when you see someone living the dream you abandoned. This means that the very people around you are part of your psychological map. They are signs, signals, reflections. Pay attention. If you feel intense envy, anger, or admiration, ask, what is this showing me about myself? The outer world is a mirror of the inner one, and it will always point you back to where you need to look. To make this practical, imagine yourself standing at a crossroads. Before you are 7 paths, each leading to one of these destructive places. You will walk them, whether you want to or not. You will step into shadow, persona, collective illusion, archetypal possession, inner neglect, unlived life, and false light. The question is not whether you will encounter them, but how long you will stay. Will you live your entire life trapped in persona? Will you die haunted by your unlived life? Will you collapse under inner neglect? Or will you recognize the signs, learn the lessons, and move forward? That is the challenge Jung places before each of us. In the end, Jung's message was simple. Destruction can lead to creation. The shadow can lead to integration. The persona can lead to authenticity. The collective illusion can lead to individuality. Archetypal possession can lead to balance. Inner neglect can lead to self-care. The unlived life can lead to reclaimed dreams. And the false light can lead to genuine wisdom. But only if you are willing to see clearly, to face the discomfort, and to walk the path consciously. So let me leave you with this thought. Right now, as you listen, you are standing somewhere on your inner map. Perhaps you know exactly where. Perhaps you are realizing it for the first time. Wherever you are not broken. You are not doomed. You are simply in a place that can destroy you if you stay too long, but that can teach you if you choose to move forward. Jung gave us this gift. The understanding that the psyche is vast, and that every dark corner contains the possibility of light. Ask yourself, what is my shadow asking me to face? What mask of persona am I ready to remove? What collective beliefs am I ready to question? What archetypes are dominating me? What parts of myself have I neglected? What dreams have I left unlived? And what illusions of false light am I clinging to? These questions are not easy, but they are the beginning of freedom. Life is not about avoiding darkness. Life is about becoming whole. And wholeness means walking through these 7 places with courage, humility, and awareness. That is the path Jung invites us to take. It is not the easy path, but it is the real one. And if you choose it, you may discover something extraordinary. That the very places that once threatened to destroy your mind can become the places that save your soul.